It's a special honor and a privilege to welcome Bret Baier back to the show. Bret is the chief political anchor for Fox News Channel and the anchor and executive editor of Special Report with Bret Baier. He previously served as chief White House correspondent for Fox and as the network's national security correspondent based at the Pentagon. He is also the author of 6 New York Times bestsellers, mostly about other presidents, including 3 Days at the Brink, FDR's daring gamble to win World War II, and George Washington and the Fragile American Experiment. Bret, your new book, which is terrific and is hard to put down, is called To Rescue the American Spirit, Teddy Roosevelt and the Birth of a Superpower. What makes Teddy Roosevelt particularly relevant to this moment in 2025?
Well, Michael, thanks for having me on. I think it's first of all, he jumps off the page as far as the anecdotes about the 26th president. He is larger than life. But this book, despite all the stories that are about Teddy Roosevelt, it focuses on a soda straw moment where Teddy Roosevelt's real legacy was about trying to make America the global leader, to essentially have America lead the world as he's president. And how he does that is there is a territorial dispute between Russia and Japan. It's devolving into a world war, possibly. And he reaches out to leaders of both Russia and Japan and says he wants to be the place where they have a peace treaty negotiation. He brings the delegations to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and essentially sets up all the logistics for this negotiation. And after intense days of negotiation, they finally get a deal, a peace treaty. The war stops, and America essentially is on the world stage as the one who solved that. Teddy Roosevelt gets the Nobel Peace Prize. And it really put America on the map in the world's eyes as being a player on the world stage. Why is that relevant? Obviously, we've seen a lot of peace treaty negotiations shepherded by President Trump. The biggest is yet to come through, obviously, when Russia-Ukraine.
Right, which again, the peace in 1905 that Teddy Roosevelt brokered, as you point out in the book, and the book again is called To Rescue the American Spirit. It changed the whole history of the world because Russia was in the grips of a revolution. This 12 years before the definitive Russian Revolution. And the entire world benefited, one could say, from the fact that Japan and Russia were brought to negotiation or negotiated peace through Theodore Roosevelt. He's also famous for saying, "Speak softly, but carry a big stick," uh, and which is supposed to be an old African, I believe, saying. Uh, is that something that our leadership today might benefit from?
Well, yeah, exactly. I think if Teddy Roosevelt was here, he would advise more, maybe more of the speak softly, and but he's got the President Trump's got the carry the big stick thing, as evidenced by the nuclear, um, the strike on the nuclear facility in Iran. In his own way, though, when Teddy Roosevelt says that, essentially he means publicly, don't demean the other countries. Try to get along publicly, even though behind the scenes it may be tough negotiations. Speak softly in front of the public, and then um, make sure that they know you are strong, and the world knows that you're strong. He did that another way, and a few months after the peace negotiation with Russia and Japan, Japan starts kind of saber rattling again, and Roosevelt decides that he looks at the U.S. Navy and its battleship gray, and he paints all of the ships gleaming white. And he calls it the Great White Fleet. And he decides to send it around the world as a show of force about the exceptional strength of the U.S. Navy. At the time, Congress said, "What are you doing? We're not paying for this." He said, "I've got the money to send them." He actually didn't have the money to bring them back, but he eventually got it. Um, but he sent them around the world, and it had the desired effect. You know, the old saying, "Peace through strength," that Reagan used a lot. That's what he was showing, and that armada that went around the world not only showed America was on the map, but was strong and powerful.
Now, a lot of people have brought up Theodore Roosevelt's name because he ran for a third time and failed to get the Republican nomination. And as he showed very dramatically in the book, broke up his longtime friendship with the president he had handpicked as his successor, William Howard Taft, and he ran as a third party candidate. What do we learn particularly from the fact that he got 27% of the vote when he ran as a bull moose candidate? Not nearly as successful as one would have expected from such a popular president. What went wrong?
Well, you know, it was a little ironic in that when he handed the baton to Taft as he was leaving, had the understanding that Taft was going to follow pretty much all of the blueprint of the Roosevelt presidency and continue Roosevelt policies. Taft became his own man in how he was campaigning, and it really irked Roosevelt. Taft, more conservative, more traditional Republican. The ironic part is that Roosevelt was exactly the same when he took over after the assassination of McKinley, and essentially told all the cabinet we were going to keep the same McKinley policies, and that lasted for a few months, and then he became his own man. Um, so I think the lesson was that when you split up that vote, it's not going to work well for you. And it handed the presidency to Woodrow Wilson. He did campaign aggressively, and he tried to win the primary, won 6 states, but Taft consolidated the Republican Party and won the primary. And then he runs this third party race as a bull moose or progressive party candidate, and essentially is successful enough, but not successful enough to win, successful enough to prevent Taft from becoming president. And Republicans look back at that saying that was a big mistake.
Well, again, Taft ended up with 8 electoral votes, which is the lowest number of electoral votes for any president seeking reelection.